Alright, it's Monday, 5 p.m., so that means it's time for the Monday Music Method here on Gadway Violin. In today's episode, we're going to continue looking through the entire Bach partitas and sonatas book. Over the course of the year, we're probably going to get through every single movement of every single one of these pieces. The exact edition that I'm using for these is going to be the Galamian edition. You can find that on Amazon. That is not public domain, but you can get a public domain version for free on IMSLP for sure. This piece, this is the first movement of the Sonata number 1. It's very difficult. It's very slow, and in contrast, some of the other movements are very fast and difficult for other reasons, but this movement, it's really difficult all around, not just for sound production, intonation, but also for rhythmic control and interpretation. So we're going to work our way through it today and talk about some of the challenges that this piece presents, as well as some of my strategies for perhaps getting through them. As always, since this is going to be a pretty casual live stream, it's a great opportunity to let me know if you have any questions about violin technique, this piece in particular, or if there's anything in the future you'd like me to look at or discuss. The idea and hope for this live stream is to create a kind of community here with Gadway Violin and learn from each other. Alright, I'm going to just start playing from the beginning here, and we'll take a look at my first stumbling, perhaps. Alright, well, there's a lot of things that just happened in that very first phrase. A lot of things that I didn't particularly love about how I played it. And I'll talk about why they probably happened and how I can go about fixing them. So the first thing that I didn't love was I feel like I didn't really have a true understanding, or at least I didn't really depict what the rhythm was. This is an Adagio movement. Of course, it's a kind of prelude. And really it should feel rubato. Rubato is an Italian word that basically translates to borrowing or stealing, and it refers to how you can take time and give time back, so you can slow down and speed up. But I have a rule of thumb for changing our tempo in our interpretations of music. My rule of thumb is whenever you're doing something with time, or something in particular with rubato, I believe that you should be focused on either changing your tempo, making it faster, or changing your tempo, making it slower. In other words, I believe you should be messing around with the beats or the pulse rather than messing around or changing the rhythm. The rhythm should always stay somewhat consistent or agreeable to what's on the page. So if we do slow down, we should do so in a fashion that doesn't completely alter or change the rhythm. So as you see here, pretty complex rhythm, right? We have quarter note, not complex, but then immediately we jump into 3 bars. Whenever we see the 3 bars, that's going to indicate our 30-second notes. And then it's hidden here, but there's a 4th bar added right there, indicating 64th notes. So it's tempting to just think long note, fast notes, long note. And that's certainly a way that some violinists approach it. But I think that before we make any decisions about our timing, we should fully comprehend the rhythm. So that means we have to define what we're using to count. What unit of time are we using to count and divide our measures? The suggested rhythm, or unit of time, is going to be a quarter note because we're in cut time. But that's kind of ridiculous, right? If we're counting quarter notes, we're going to really have a hard time keeping track of where each of these notes should line up in between them. And we might just want to go faster. Obviously we can do it slower, but it's just going to be hard to be very consistent. To show with my scroll where those divisions are. I think the most realistic thing is we're going to have to do most teachers' favorite word, and that is we're going to have to subdivide. So subdividing is just a term we use for when we take the suggested time or the time signature and we divide it further. So the time signature is suggesting, because of the C, that we have common time, 4/4, right? So 4 quarter notes per measure. But that's not going to be enough for us to feel really confident and comfortable. So let's take it a step further and divide each measure, instead of into 4 quarter notes, let's divide each measure into 8 eighth notes. We would just say we're going in 8 here. So I'm going to quickly dash where those eighth notes are going to line up. There's going to be 2 on the quarter note. There's going to be 1 here. And then the next eighth note will land right here. These are eighth notes, so we can see where those land. And we can see how each slash represents an equal amount of time if we're doing no changes to our tempo at all. Now what I'm suggesting is when we decide to do rubato, or if we want to change the time, we should do so in a way that changes these slashes, their time, their tempo, right? But it doesn't change the individual things in between them. So we don't have random fermatos occurring, but rather we have suddenly these eighth notes, or our pulse, might move forward or it might pull back. But we're going to be defining it by understanding our pulse. Let's see if eighth notes are going to be sufficient for our subdivisions. So far it's okay. Let's do it a little slower. Now if we wanted to take that measure and do something with the time, we could think about where those eighth notes are and start to drag them out or compress them, push them forward. Let's think about having the first 2 beats be dragged out and then falling forward. 2, 3, 4. So we're using the eighth notes as our means for feeling that rubato. Now, I'm not necessarily convinced that I like that idea in particular, but at the very least, we have a basis for how we're thinking and internalizing that rhythm. Eighth notes, I think, are going to be our bare minimum here for our subdivisions, but you can certainly go a step further, especially if you want to have more control over your rubato. So if you want to get really crazy and have more control over your rubato, it's going to be important to really fully understand the smaller subdivisions, so you could think about where these 16th notes would line up. So instead of being in 4/4, or thinking in 8/8, we could think in terms of 16/16, right? So figuring out where those 16th notes are, and using those to gauge our tempo. Again, we're changing our tempos, our pulses, but we're trying not to change the rhythm. I think 16 notes are going to be probably as subdivided as we need to feel. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. It's hard to speak and play at the same time. But basically, you're going to have 4 of these 16 notes for each beat, right? So I think 16 notes are definitely going to be a good means for subdividing. But for simplicity, we're going to write out our dashes on every measure when you were learning this on the eighth notes, so that we're just not so encumbered by slash marks. But even still, with those slash marks, we can internalize where the in-betweens happen, right? We don't necessarily need to see them. We don't necessarily need to see any slash marks, theoretically, but I cannot recommend them enough if you're learning this piece for the first time. So many violinists will take a look at this piece and they'll try to listen to recordings, and then they'll try to play the piece based off of recordings that they hear, and they don't really understand this obviously sophisticated rhythm. And so they're just kind of doing a carbon copy, or the best they can, of somebody's predetermined rubato. But that's never going to be a great way to express your own interpretation. And you might find that when you fully understand the rhythm, that you don't agree with some of your favorite violinists' ways of actually doing rubato in this piece. It's really quite interesting. All right. So we're going to keep the eighth notes throughout, thinking about them. And now that we've talked about how we're generally going to approach this piece in terms of timing, let's talk really quickly about some fingering things that happened already. So the suggested fingering here in the Galamian is really great. Whenever we see a fingering circled in Galamian, it means that we're just going to be in position, and that finger is going to be a stretch or a compression. If we're in first position, that 3 on the F sharp is going to be a compression, meaning we're going to bring that third finger down. In other words, it's going to go from this to this. That's really the only thing that happens fingering-wise for a while. Try that again. Okay, so I'm just trying to play at this moment relatively strict with the tempo, and that's a wonderful way to figure out immediately where you don't want to be strict with the tempo. So a clear place for me is going to be right here when we hit that chord. That's going to be a clear place where I'm going to want to take a little extra time, because we're essentially bookending this phrase, right, that is establishing the entirety of the tonality of this 4-movement sonata, right? I think it's 4 movements. We're in the G minor sonata. So bookending it, I think it's a good idea to take some time there. That felt really unnatural to push through that. And then another spot is going to be right here. And for me, this spot feels like it wants to take time because this note here, this D natural, really wants a chance to emerge from the triple stop. In terms of fingering, we're just still in first position for all of this. I'm going to quickly go from here. So we want that D to have a chance to kind of speak on its own. One of the prerequisites for this, I should mention, before you can really even consider learning this piece, you should be very comfortable with playing any amount of stops, triple stop, quadruple stop, double stop, and releasing from any of the notes into any of the others. So meaning playing a quadruple stop and then ending on any of the strings, either the E string, which is probably the easiest for quadruple stops, or all the way to ending on the G string. The first example of this that I use in this piece is obviously at the beginning, where we're going to hold the G, and it's going to kind of emerge from that triple stop, that quadruple stop. And that's pretty simple in terms of how we do it technically. Feels very natural for our down bows to kind of just continue in that motion downward to get us off of all those strings and into the E string. But here's different. When we get to that second chord, now we want to bring out that middle line. And that F sharp emerges from the chord. And that's an example of where we're going to need to let off of the top string and remain on the middle. And whenever we're talking about string level, or string height you might say, I like to say string level, we're almost always controlling that with our upper arm. How high or low that is will determine what string we're on. So while we're playing those chords, that upper arm is going to precede that release of the top note and give our bow the smooth movement to the D string. Whenever we want smoothness in the bow arm, we're basically always going to preface every movement with a large muscle group, large muscles. We're going to think of moving our big muscles earlier and the little muscles will follow. So the wrist, the hand, and the fingers will follow after the fact. This is a generalization. There's always going to be exceptions to this. But when we're talking about this technique in particular, it's going to apply. And then the next one is going to be the same exact technique, just instead of the middle string being the D string, it's going to be the A string with that C natural emerging from the chord. Now, something that my teacher, I remember this from way back, taught me, and I actually love doing here, is on this final chord, even though all things are equal, right, they're all eighth notes, because we've had this, what you might call an alto line going throughout, why not highlight it by giving that B flat a little bit of extra love, perhaps letting it emerge from the chord. And of course, taking a little time will allow you to help bring that out. I've always, since first hearing this piece, I don't play it as well as I'd like, but just grabs one from the first beat and measure, imagine. Not quite sure. Must be translation here. From Skinny Carlos. Always great stuff. Thank you. I do understand that. Appreciate that. Imagine that man's mind on a day-to-day. Yeah. Yeah, Bach, his music to me really feels like some kind of insane mechanism working. All these inner workings just perfectly fitting together, almost like a luxury watch. Maybe that's a bad example, but that's kind of how I view some of his music. It's just so incredible how it all fits together. We're going to go for measure 3 here. Okay, so I'm kind of making up some rhythms here. I need to refer to my slash work, or better said, I need to do some slash work. Let's find where all these eighth notes are so that I can be a little bit more clear. All of these slashes are going to represent exactly where those eighth notes are lining up in each of those measures. And it's crazy to see the distances between them and how inconsistent they are, which gives you a little bit of insight into how fast or how many notes need to fit in some of this time frame. That's why one of the reasons I really like using this slash style for identifying our beats. It's a great visual tool. So if you see here, so much space in the second half of this measure, right? Half of the measure is here, and the other half is all of this. So this all needs to happen essentially twice as fast as this, as you can visually see. It's amazing how once you put those slashes in, it's a lot clearer and a lot easier to see and feel where those beats should be. Okay, so fingering wise, here I'm looking at this 4 at the bottom. This is my first disagreement here with Maestro Ivan Galamian. I think I prefer to not use a 4 there. If we use a 4 there for the C sharp, right, a kind of low 4, we're going to need to use that 4 right away on the E string. And I generally want to refrain from this kind of large movement where we're hopping over 2 strings and yet trying to maintain our lateral position. It's tough. Maybe that's not the right word. This lateral movement to maintain our longitudinal? I don't know. We're not even going to try, but you get what I'm saying. It's a big jump physically for the 4th finger to move from that position on the G string all the way to the position on the E string. And so we can just purely avoid that by just using a different finger. We can just use a 3 down here instead, a kind of high 3, and then just using a low 4 here. I should note that if it were a different finger that was doing that kind of jump, it wouldn't be as problematic or as much of an issue for me. from measure 4. Yeah, that is going to be a spot where we're going to take a ton of time for sure. This is a huge cadence. Whenever you're in a key signature and you find yourself having this big moment on a note that is the dominant, if we're in G, D is our dominant. That's going to be a pretty big moment. And so it's a good idea to take a little bit of time there. So in terms of phrasing, I'm just feeling what is natural, perhaps because I've played this quite a bit in the past and because I've heard this a bunch. But I feel like there's clear kind of a low point here where we're really feeling like all of this material is bringing us down, down, down. And then we creep up to here. So we could get real precise and think about how we're writing these decrescendos or whatever, but I don't know how important that is as much as it is to think big picture of where we're going and what the shape of the line is. We can see these bass notes trending downwards, and that doesn't necessarily mean we have to get less, but it does mean that it's going in a direction and we have to either emphasize or decrescendo. And I think it makes sense in this case to do either, honestly. Alternatively, we could do kind of the opposite where we feel like this D is going to be an arrival, but a kind of death. Make a lot of sense. I feel like I prefer, just off of instinct, to grow into it, but often it doesn't sound very scientific, but sometimes the best way to figure out what you want to do is by just trying different things and figuring out what speaks to you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be, making music, and music is really highly personal, and whatever moves you and feels right, I think that carries a lot more weight than whatever somebody on the internet says, or even, dare I say, your teacher says about interpretation. Of course, all these things go out the window if you're auditioning to an institution that clearly values, historical practice. You got to make decisions and draw your lines in the sand wherever they may lie. For me, I'm not taking any institutional auditions at the moment, and I don't really plan on it. So when I play something like this, it's very much for myself. And so, I'm going to do exactly the interpretation that feels right. And that might even not be the same thing every single time I play it. That might not be true for every piece of music, but certainly for something like this, where it's going to be very, very rubato. And ultimately, it's believed that this kind of music, or particularly this kind of movement, comes from this very highly improvised style, where Bach might have initially just thought of the chord structure and the general blocks, and then just kind of filled in everything else on a whim, on what felt right in the moment. He was famously a brilliant improviser. All right, I'm going to go for measure 6 here, and I'm going to feel the best interpretation that speaks to me in the moment. Definitely feel like I want to die on this D a little bit. I mean, I don't want to die, but musically I want to let this morendo, you might say, and then let this come into a question afterwards. With this big arrival, tension, release, but the tension's not all the way gone. Yeah, so that we have these little questions. We can even see the shape here, right? This insistence on not just playing the B flat right away, but having this delay. This is a little question movement. And I'm saying the word question, but it doesn't have to be exactly how you feel it or think of it. So let's try that. I'm going to go from that big resolution again, where the D is. Figure out a bowing here. That's all super weird and messy. I like it. Yeah, I need to make sure that I'm somehow on an up bow here. Somewhere around here so that I can be a down bow here. This is more important than anything, I think. So we could do this bowing. For me, this feels like I'm running out of bow here. From 10. I see the problem. This is why Galamian suggests this down up. But I kind of hate that. So I think that portato is a little bit out of character for this period of music, maybe. So it's not going to be a good solution. almost feel like the most simple solution would be to either split this slur somewhere or the next slur somewhere. And we can either split it right on the strong beat, or we can do something a little bit fancy, split it before the strong beat. We definitely don't need congruent bowing. We don't need our bows to be exactly the same length always. Prefer just staying on the tip over here and then splitting the bow even earlier, like just doing 2 notes on a little down bow. This kind of stuff doesn't matter that much, I must admit. A lot of people worry so much about bowings, but honestly it doesn't matter that much unless there's like something really specific that is being bowed. Like one of the famous things that Bach will do is he'll do pairs and he'll do trios. So when you see 3 small notes, for example, we can probably find one here. Like this, for example. We want to be careful to change that bowing in particular because that's a specific feel that he's probably looking for. And if we're unsure and we really care, we can refer to the manuscript to see what he actually did. It's one of the reasons I really like this version of the Bach sonatas, is because it includes photocopies of all the manuscripts in the back. Or you can use, and then when you see this bowing as well, it's the same thing. He has these pairs, and those are very deliberate in style, and so I wouldn't change those kinds of things. But when you have these long slurs, I don't think that changing them matters much at all. What's going on here? Now. I thought that was the solution. Oh, I see. So I do like that we end up down bow here, but now we need another bow somewhere. Right, because we want to be down bow here. This is our ultimate goal. Oftentimes, working out bowings is going to be best or easiest to do when working backwards. I'll actually say that again because that's a really something that I've found to be true over time. Oftentimes, when we're trying to decide on a bowing, also sometimes with fingerings, but mostly for bowing, if we work backwards, it's easier to work out because you have your ultimate destination, your definite preference for where you want to be, and then you can work how you get there from that point. So again, we know our priority is we want to end up on a down bow here, so that makes our life a little bit easier in this investigation because we know that in order to be a down bow there, we're going to need to be an up bow somewhere before then. I must go practice. I'm enjoying listening to you figuring it out. We'll catch it tomorrow. Thanks for making the bid. Yeah, definitely go practice. That's a way better use of your time than watching me spout off and do my practice. So thank you for watching. Okay, let's take a continuation here. So yeah, if we know our down bow is here, then we want to be up bow here or here. So we could have a potential split here. If that makes sense. If we want this to be up bow, then this can either be down bow or up, down, up. Let's see. Now it's just a matter of feeling what feels right. So we'll put the first option above. We can have up bow, or we can have down bow. That would require an up bow somewhere earlier. Let's assume that we're on a down bow here though. And try the top bowing. I'll make it a little bit smoother. I don't hate it. Okay, that's in the running. Let's see if we did a split on this chord. I don't hate that either. So a possibility is to do down bow, up bow here. The final option would be to do this whole thing on an up bow, which is definitely an option. But that means that we need to be low enough here. Honestly, I like how that feels. Which means that we need to find a way to get to the frog before that. Again, working backwards in bowings is really gonna show us what we really like. Show me what I like. Okay, so what we like is bringing us to our initial issue, which is how do we get to the frog here without doing this bowing, because I do not like that. And we can slur, portato. We can alternatively do the whole thing up bow. Let's see. Hate it. Hate it. Don't love it. Wow, we can brute force it and just try to get there, but I don't love that either. I really don't like the portato sound. It's not working. Portato, but what I mean by that is the same direction bowing, where we're doing up, up, up. It just doesn't fit with this piece. And I mean, maybe you can make it work, but I'm finding that I can't. So that's a deal breaker for me, which means we can do one of two things. We can either be up bow before it and get us closer to the frog, or we can just travel a lot, brute force those up bows. Let's try being up bow before it. I didn't like it before, so let's see what happens. God, it's so awkward that I messed up the fingering. Don't like it. Let's see. I think, unfortunately, with a lot of this stuff, the truth is there is no perfect answer a lot of the time. And it's just a matter of where are the drawbacks in each and which one ends up being the best. And I think the truth is that just trying to use these up bows to move to the frog or to the balance point might be the most comfortable solution. Now, can we get that to sound not so jumpy though? question. We do... This might be the answer. Again, I don't like love it, but I just don't think I can find... Maybe you guys can find a bowing here that we could love, but right now I'm finding a bowing that I like, and that's gonna maybe have to do. So we're gonna do a double down, and we're gonna use, if we're in third position, we're gonna take advantage of the string crossing here between the B flat and the D string and the A string, to help us create that proper articulation without having that really classic portato sound. I want to avoid that portato sound. When you are doing a string crossing during a portato stroke, it's much easier for it to sound a lot more similar to a proper détaché and a lot less like that classic portato sound that we don't always love. Feels great. Very, very easy. I don't think it's going to be hard at all to practice it and work it out so that it feels nice. Or even better, because it already feels nice. All right, so we're going to go right from there. I'll do it one more time and then move on. Fingering are we doing here? All right, it's kind of working. I don't like this fingering here. I don't. What is that like? I see. They want us to use Glamian suggesting that we use a circled 4. Again, that always is going to mean the finger is to be compressed or stretched out of its normal position. So in this case, it would be a low 4 to replace where the natural 3 would go, the G natural. Don't like it. It's not that hard to just use 3 and then 3 again, even though that 3 is going to have to change for the D flat. But I think I prefer it. We'll put it in parentheses because it is not going to be actually a shift. So it's the anticipated fingering in that position. And then I do like this. Going to second here allows us to have a trill on a really strong 2-3. And then that 1 just moves down a half step to the A natural. I'm going to go right from the beginning of that measure. Ooh. The one problem with this fingering, that fingering is that as it stands right now, our 1 here has to jump from the E string to the G string and shift. Now that's certainly something we can do. But whenever we're deciding on fingerings, we want to find not just something we can do, but something that's going to be the most comfortable. And sometimes the most comfortable thing is not going to be very comfortable, but maybe we can find something a little more comfortable. option here is to move instead to second position here. And then we're already in position for this. And we don't have that issue because now we're on a fourth finger here. So it's either that we do that, in my opinion, or we do the quick move from the F natural first finger to the B flat on the bottom. Yeah, I mean, we can make that old fingering work, I just don't like it. So to each their own. Alright, we've gotten to the halfway point of this really dense piece, so I'm going to play through it. Play through what we've done so far and see how much of it's stuck. Again, I didn't really internalize my rhythm to start, my tempo. Yeah, and we'll get to the rest of this piece next Monday at 5 p.m. for the Monday Music Method. For those of you who watched live, thank you for doing so. And for those of you who have tuned in afterwards, make sure you leave a comment below if there's something you'd like me to take a look at in the future. With that, as always, happy practicing. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.